our dear viewers, as well as the panelists, to the very last, I think this perhaps is one of the very last webinars or forums. Social entrepreneurship, a paradigm for inclusive economic recovery and growth. I hope that in the next 2 hours, we will be able to learn from each other, be able to make this absolutely interactive. Wherever you are joining us, whether it's, we have some of our panelists joining us from the US, so it's like 6 o'clock in the morning. We have some of the panelists joining from Zambia, and we have some of the panelists joining from Pretoria as well as in Nairobi. So thank you very much, our dear panelists, for finding time to be with us. So I'll start by introducing myself so that I get that off the way. So my name is David Ogiga. I'm the founder and CEO of SoteHub, which is a business incubator in rural area that is at the coast part of Kenya. We work with young people from high school, universities, as well as out of school youth, and incubate their businesses because we believe, of course, the young people are the future of this continent. So that's one. But two is I wear another hat. I'm the chairperson of Countrywide Innovation Hubs. This is a network of tech hubs in the country. We are 27 in total, especially for the hubs outside Nairobi. As well as we are aware, a lot of tech hubs usually concentrate in the capital city. And so our idea is to try and decentralize innovation as well as opportunities that are able to go to young people. And so I am the chairperson, and of course I have a team and we work together. Right, so with me is a distinguished panelist, but before I introduce the panelist, maybe I'll just read a short overview of why we are here. So strict social distancing laws brought about to prevent the spread of virus has forced several employers to switch to remote working, exposing the levels of unpreparedness of many African enterprises to make such shift. We want to delve into significance of innovation by social entrepreneurs as an essential part of ensuring business continuity in the long term. And of course, our discussion is pre and post COVID, and how we can be able to get this continent to the next level. I welcome all the dear listeners and audience. So if in case you want to ask any question, we have a chat section. So any question you might want to ask for any panelists, please feel free. And let's make this very interactive because we are looking about sharing personal experiences. So we have a panel of 5 experts and professionals distinguished in different sectors in the continent. So I don't want to talk about their qualifications, so I want to allow them to describe that to the audience. So I'll start with Mr. Evans Mafenduka, who is joining us from Pretoria, South Africa. So Mr. Evans, please, so you can tell us a little bit about the work that you do. And yes, just something little about yourself as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, David. My name is Evans Mapenduga, just as you have said. I am on the board of End Poverty, which is a faith-driven, not-for-profit organization that works on a number of continents. We have been in operation since 1985, and our vision is really to equip local communities to become self-sustaining. We also have a vision our mission is to empower hard-working men and women with economic and spiritual resources that in essence enable them to unleash their potential and free themselves from poverty. I've been working in microfinance for over 35 years, and I've had the privilege of working on almost all of the continents of the world. But I'm stationed in South Africa, where I am working as a consultant, but helping, if you like, the Development Microfinance Association just to gain recognition in South Africa, because the sector is struggling and does not have as much recognition by the government as is necessary. But over and above that, I work also to support some of our partners that are part of the End Poverty Network. I hope that explains who I am. If you have any other questions, please let me know. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. I think that explains a lot. Thank you for joining us. Next is Madam Elena Pons, I think joining us from the US. So,
thank you, David. Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you. First, I wanted to thank Ashoka and the organizers of the annual African Conference on Social Entrepreneurship for having me here. It's my pleasure. And I represent Oryx Impact Fund, which is a fund of funds focusing on fund managers in Africa, either regional fund managers or global fund managers that have a strong presence on the ground. And the idea of Oryx Impact is actually to leverage that knowledge of these local teams while using Oryx as a platform, as a channel for capital to in the various strategies. In our research, when talking with fund managers, we have gathered that some of these fund managers have a high concentration of investors, mostly DFIs. And we've seen that a lot of them are ready for the diversification of investor source. So that's basically in a nutshell what we do at Oryx Impact. We'll select fund managers that firstly adhere to at least one of our focus areas, which are economic development, and with that the main trait of that is job creation, climate change mitigation and adaptation, and female empowerment, with the overarching goal that what we want to do is to create opportunities on the ground, so to mitigate forced migration. So first, fund managers need to adhere to the strong impact themes, at least one of them. And then secondly, we'll look for fund managers that through their track record, their strategy, and their business model can prove that they can achieve meaningful financial returns. I'm the fund manager at Oryx Impact, and I joined a couple of months ago when the firm was established. My main responsibility here is to build the portfolio, to do deal flow and build the portfolio. So finding fund managers on the ground in the African continent. I previously worked for MCE Social Capital, which is a provider of debt instruments in the financial sector and agriculture value chain. And during my 7 years there, I deployed funds mostly in Latin America, but also in Africa, South Asia, Central Asia, and the Caucasus. And then, as I mentioned, sorry, I'll stop here.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think you are in a very important sector, and we hope we can be able to learn much during this discussion. Next is Mr. Alejandro Lucena, who is director at Africa Digna Foundation. So welcome, Mr. Alejandro.
Thank you, David, and hello, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank the Tangasa University and Ashoka and all the partners for giving me the opportunity of being part of this event. Also, it's a pleasure to be here today with this group of experts, so I'm very glad. Well, I'm Alejandro Lucena from Barcelona and currently the director of Africa Digna Foundation. Africa Digna develops projects related to health and education, and we also support social entrepreneurs in Kenya and Rwanda. Africa Digna is convinced that investing in social entrepreneurs is one of the main pillars to reach progress and social well-being. In this regard, Africa Digna invests a maximum of 5,000 euros, comprising a loan with a repayment period of 5 years with an interest of 4% to support organizations registered in Kenya or Rwanda with revenues of 5,000 euros per year or less. So this is more or less my introduction. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Alejandro. Next we have Innocent Makiramiti. Sorry if my accent, I don't get it very well, but forgive me.
You pronounce it very well. You pronounce it very well, David.
Thank you.
Good afternoon and good morning to all the panelists, and I must really appreciate the invitation that David, which you have offered to COMESA to be in this workshop. My name is Innocent Makiramiti. I'm the Senior Private Sector Development Officer with the COMESA Secretariat in Lusaka, Zambia. COMESA comprises of 21 member states in Africa. It is almost the whole of Africa, half of Africa rather. Spreading from Tunisia, Egypt, East Africa, down to Central Africa, down to Eswatini. Its key role is to promote trade and investment within the region. It facilitates a promotion of trade, it facilitates promotion of investment in the region. I am with the Industry and Agriculture Division, whose sole objective or sole mandate is to promote industrialization within the region. It has been noticed that the lower levels of intra-COMESA trade is mainly due to low levels of industrialization within the region. So our mandate is to promote industrialization, especially as it relates to the small, medium enterprises, because those are the key participant in as far as industrialization within the region is concerned. So we really are there to develop the harmonized strategies, implementation modalities, of promoting industrialization within the small, medium enterprises sector. With that, I think I submit, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Innocent. Next is Mr. Chukuma, I think, joining us, I think also from the US, Managing Partner for AACOSE Capital, Nigeria. Welcome, Mr. Chukwuka.
Thank you very much, David, and thank you to all my fellow panelists here. Yes, I am dialing from the US, so it's wonderful to actually have been invited by Ashoka, because I've heard so much about the organization. I wish we were live in Kenya so we could see that maybe next year. But suffice to say, I'm an investment banker. I've always been an investment banker. AACOSE Capital, we are a principal investment and advisory firm focused on West Africa mainly, but we have done a few deals outside of West Africa. We believe in the flexible capital investment model, which allows us to invest across the spectrum of capital, mainly equity and mezzanine financing, but sometimes on the senior debt side through partnerships with funders. I'd say our key expertise is actually in project finance, corporate finance, and restructuring assignments. We do advisory work, but even in those situations, we sometimes will switch out and take some kind of equity stake in the transaction. I'm based between the US and Lagos. We have an office in Lagos in Nigeria, but my partner and I go back and forth between the US. Again, capital tends to be outside of Africa, especially for the large infrastructure type deals. And then you obviously have the transactions on the continent. So we go back and forth. we believe again that you know, we should invest across stages. So early stage growth, expansion, capital. We have a club of investors that we work with, even though we don't have a dedicated fund. Although we are planning to raise a fund soon, we actually have a club of investors that come into our transactions. Believe in risk-adjusted returns. So we're essentially looking to generate attractive risk-adjusted returns where we can preserve capital, but also have some kind of capital appreciation. And yeah, we pride ourselves in taking our time to understand sectors like technology and fintech and financial services, media, telecoms, but also other areas like healthcare, which obviously is closer to impact investing because it's possible to do good and also invest. So thank you very much for having me.
Thank you very much. And with that, I think it wraps the intros. So we'll request our dear audience that tell us your name. You can also introduce yourself in the chat section, which organization you work with, because we also want to know who is joining us, and you never know, this could be an opportunity for sort of like a partnership. So Mr. Chikuko, I think Vincent shared with me a book you wrote. Vincent, who is a director for AACOSE in Kenya. I have not had time to read it because I was given like half an hour ago. But during your submission, maybe you could also be able to talk a little bit. I'm sure you'll be sharing also your journey on entrepreneurship during this.
Sure.
Okay. So let's dive in straight away. I think we are doing well on time. So I'll start with Mr. Evans from BOD End Poverty. From the description, End Poverty has helped build over 200,000 small businesses in 37 countries, which is around the world. That's really amazing. And so what we wanted to find out was, what kind of businesses do you consider? And in your journey of investing in the African context, what could be the success and challenges? So just in a summary, if you could be able to.
Thank you so much, David. We, like I said earlier on, really work with the poorest of the poor, or rather, that's how we started. We do have a new initiative in Kenya now that looks at social enterprises, but in the last 30 years, we've really been working through partner organizations that are locally based, that work in poor communities, providing what many people would see or know as microfinance. And those institutions, of course, work with poor women mostly in the rural areas. And so they provide a lot of different types of support, which includes credit itself, and also some business training, some coaching, and a few other social matters that will help communities. Now the businesses themselves involve anything from agriculture, manufacturing, through trading and service. And because these are very tiny loans, we really are talking about very small scale manufacturing. We could be talking about metal fabrication, like making door frames, window frames. We can be talking about carpentry, or woodworking, making, chairs, and making a few, furniture-based things. You could be talking about, trading, where you find a lot of people working in markets, selling vegetables and fruit, and also selling maybe second-hand clothing. So we basically work with all sorts of small businesses that you would actually expect to find in the informal sector. But of course, having shifted our attention to, maybe not shifted because that would be a wrong term to use, but having added, if you like, social enterprises, beginning in Kenya, we are now looking at, bigger versions of those businesses. And, some of the businesses that we have considered, we haven't really started operating, but we've looked at a number of small businesses or social enterprises that we want to work with. And some of those are in the education sector, working with people that are homeschooling their children, or working with, if you like, some children with learning disabilities. We've looked at, companies that are producing, if you like, personal protective equipment, PPE, because of the COVID-19 pandemic, and also distributing those. We also are looking at food security businesses like, crop and animal, farming, also producing animal feed, small scale manufacturing. We've seen people that are manufacturing clothing, some of them leather products, and exporting them worldwide. And we have also worked with a few people that are in medical services. So it's a whole lot of businesses that we're looking at. Okay. I don't know if anything that you want me to.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much. And I think just to the sector that you are focusing on, I think even in Kenyan context, it supports nearly 8% of the jobs in the informal sector. And so I cannot underestimate the importance of that sector. So maybe if you could just also share with us how the journey is like working with this group. What are these challenges you face, or how do you overcome, and successes? I think that's something we'll be happy to listen to.
Well, in terms of successes, I think we've done quite well, in the sense that, when we look at the 25 million that we've invested worldwide, and also having worked in 37,000 countries, we have financed a lot of businesses. Actually, I don't have the figure now, but we're talking about in the hundreds of thousands of businesses that we've supported. But in looking at current performance, particularly during the COVID, where a lot of our businesses were affected, if you like, by the lockdowns and the curfews, and for most of our clients who were affected by travel restrictions, we find that we actually, have continued to support over 500,000 businesses. In the last month alone, we were able to save, if you like, more than 50,000, jobs from, all our different partners put together. We have saved also the jobs of the staff of our partners. And in the last 3 months, we actually talked about saving more than 146 jobs from our partners, because some of them were not able to continue operating. So some of those challenges have actually translated into us not really being able to recycle, if you like pre-COVID, we used to recycle about 95 cents in every dollar that was lent out. But because of COVID and the failure of some of our clients continuing to trade, we find that in June, for instance, we only recycled about 35 cents in every dollar that we invested. But things are looking up now because of the massive fund that we put together that helped our partners not to shed off any jobs at all, and also some of the support that we gave to the clients of our partners, which kept them going and helped them not to use some of their savings, to tidy themselves up during the COVID period, because we provided a few grants for them. And we also helped them with some of the PPE, items, so that they could wash their hands and put on masks and stuff like that.
All right. Thanks. Incredible work going on there. Yeah. So now we turn to This is Elena, running Oryx. This question is in the Kenyan context, so but I think it could also relate a lot to what's happening also in the other African countries. So as much as there's a lot of innovation going on in Africa, Kenya, for example, we have the tax silicon savannah, yet a lot of entrepreneurs still complain of a financing gap. And especially we are talking about early stage and the unbanked population. And so maybe also that target group that Evans through End Poverty are focusing on. Is there, what is it you can be able to advise, or if you have any views for countries, for example, like Kenya, how can we be able to bridge this gap? And also as you answer this, maybe also you could also tell us how you measure impacts while doing this kind of work.
Thank you for the question, David. So I will answer in several steps. And because as I mentioned, Oryx Impact is an early, it's a very recent company. It was just created a few months ago. I will talk mostly based on the experience that I have on impact investing in Africa and in general across the world, and also experience of my recent conversations with fund managers through Oryx. So the lack of access to funding capital for early stage companies and SMEs is widespread. It is nothing common to Kenya or Tanzania or just African countries. It's just widespread everywhere. I mean, there is a huge gap between the micro entrepreneur that has access to microfinance services for their business, and then the large corporations that can get access to banks and capital markets, right? So there's this missing middle that has been, it's in some places is wider, obviously in other places less, but there exists everywhere. There's a huge funding gap. And the problem with that is that if we are intending foreign investment to cover that gap, it's never going to be the case, because foreign investors, when they invest in the country, they basically want to invest in companies that are visible, they have a good story, and they're easy to manage because they manage these investments from far away. And so that's always been the problem. This main solution for the early stage companies and the SME companies would come from within the country, right? But if the country was going to set up a special fund for enterprises, for SME enterprises, that would be ideal. I mean, very few countries have that, so that's not that easy to set up. I think that in a way, for example, when I think about Oryx Impact and what we're trying to do by funding, instead of funding enterprises directly, we're funding local fund managers. I think what we're trying to do is to become here a catalyzer or flow of foreign investment into Kenya and in other regions in Africa. And so with the overall goal of strengthening the ecosystem of fund managers on the ground. So I think that's one way of helping, but in a sense, as I was saying, I mean, the missing middle is huge, and unfortunately, there are not that many providers of funding for this type of companies. And then you were talking about the unbanked population in Kenya. I've been several times in Kenya myself in the past, working with microfinance institutions in Kenya, some of them very good, actually. I was recently checking the Global Findex, which is this database of how citizens of a country are included or excluded of financial services. And the level of financial inclusion in Kenya is actually really high. In 2017 was 82%, which means that 82% of the population at some point has had some sort of a financial service, right? That has some sort of has used a financial product. And I think here what it is that there's been a sharp increase since 2011, which was 42%. The sharp increase, I think, is we can say that is due to the revolution of digital banking and fintech, right? So a lot of people through their mobile phones now have access to financial services, which is fantastic. It's great. We still have excluded groups, right? We have the rural population, older and vulnerable groups that are largely excluded. So this should there should be an effort to include them more. But I think what's more important here, instead of talking about the unbanked population, is understanding what is the quality of these services that the banked population receives. I understand that Kenya, and it's been that way for a while, but that Kenya is working on a bill, passing a bill on for regulation for fintechs, which I think is very needed, because there's been many cases of predatory lending through fintechs, through the widespread of fintech. I mean, I'm not. It's like a newer version of payday lenders. So not all fintech organizations, obviously, I'm not generalizing, but there's the lack of regulation that's a real problem in Kenya, more than the access to financial services. And in terms of what you were asking me about our impact, how we measure impact, this in the previous years when I was working in microfinance, we were measuring the typical microfinance KPIs, which includes the fintechs, the Findex, Global Findex Index, which is the access to banking services, so financial services to the population, but also number of people served, number of people with a savings account. I mean, for us, it was more important to calculate the people that actually have access to a savings account. This is historically known as the wealth building tool, more than access to a loan. And then the progress of how the PPI, for example, the progress out of index, progress out of poverty index, so etc. So we depended a lot on what the microfinance institutions were measuring. Number of women served, number of rural clients served, number of first-time borrowers and first-time savers, so people that were previously unbanked and they become banked. So that's very important. But again, these are just numbers. What we need to really look is deeper into the quality of the services that are offered, and that's in general, not only in Kenya, but in Kenya is specifically important because of the access to mobile banking. And I'll stop here.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. And because this is a very interesting and area of interest also for me, maybe just a follow up a little bit with you, Selena, is with few SMEs or startups able to get financing from commercial banks, the typical commercial banks, because they'll ask you for huge collateral. On the other hand, we have seen emergence of digital lending platforms as well as microfinance. But one of the interesting observation also is when you default, the digital lenders will call all your relatives to inform them that David has defaulted. So, and that's the same thing also for microfinance. Maybe it's different in other African countries. I don't know whether at what point, whether there is a balance between really supporting the, like investing in businesses and having ethical way also of doing the same. I don't know whether this you have come across issues like this.
Yeah, that's a very good question. I was not aware that they call all your relatives. I know they call your guarantors. So whenever you have your co-signers, whenever you get a loan, you have one or two co-signers, depending, because you have no collateral. And therefore, whenever you default, your co-signers have to respond for you. So that's normal practice. And your co-signers are signing co-signing on the loan, well known, they know that that's going to be the case, that they need to respond for you. So but I wasn't privy of that information, that they call all your relatives. I mean, that's new to me. But yeah, there is a very good organization called the Smart Campaign that works on client protection services. And all of the microfinance institutions, should, or at least all of the ones that I've ever invested, they are either endorsers or certified by the Smart Campaign. The Smart Campaign looks at things like, as I said, the client protection. For example, that they make sure that the organization, that the prices, that the prices of their financial services and products are not predatory, that there is a good, that they treat their clients with dignity. There is that the clients have the opportunity to complain if that's not the case, so that there is forms of that they can complain, formal forms that they can complain, and their complaints can be heard, and things like that. So it's very important that these microfinance institutions are adhering as much as possible to the Smart campaign. That's why it exists.
Okay. So the next is Mr. Alejandro Lucena, Africa Digna, and from also your intro, I think you told us also the focus is on two sectors, that's health and education. So the question for you was, what's the role of social and enterprise entrepreneurship in alleviating poverty? And I think looking at also the areas you work with, for example, in Nairobi, the slums of Kibera, was at how sustainable way is it possible to support the enterprises there? Because also in areas like this, we have cases of too many projects, more or less like sometimes duplicating almost the same thing, and with also little traction. So maybe you can talk about also any view on universal basic income. But I think the question is, how can we strengthen social entrepreneurship and that it be able to offer a lasting solution in poverty alleviation?
Okay, thank you, David. Yes, it's true that, right, thanks to many of our interventions, we have seen important change in the different communities that we work with. For example, awakening the curiosity and concern of young people to learn. The results force us to continue. And regarding to the role of social enterprise, it must be remembered that the social enterprise are born thanks to people with a spirit of solidarity. People that not only seek profit, and also in their income statement measures values such as equality, sustainability, or environment within our economic system. That's why now more than ever, social enterprise must be supported as engine of social change. This support must also come from public institutions. They have to be more involved, proposing alternatives such as a tax incentive for social business, for example. By supporting social enterprise, wealth is generated in all sense, not just in the economic way. For example, as you mentioned, in Kenya and Rwanda are such an amazing entrepreneurs with purpose and commitment to do great things. For example, at the slums, we are working at the Soweto slum in Kenya. We are supporting a beautiful project with the aim to empower young vulnerable women through a beauty salon where the women attend a training so they can learn a job to earn a living in order of breaking out of poverty. So they can even open their own beauty salon, so becoming an entrepreneur as well. So supporting local entrepreneurs is one of our cornerstones in Africa Digna. Although we know that certain projects can only be carried out thanks to the donation model. So although we must always work to achieve their sustainability And I agree with you that sometimes some projects are duplicated, and this is why it's very important to create alliances with the different partners are involved in the same area. And regarding, you were asking me about the universal basic income, right?
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I'm in favor, of course, but with some change, okay? I think that it will be very important to do a preliminary study should be made of why each person or community has come to depend on a basic income and change his or her situation. I think universal basic income is a help, but it's not the solution. In some countries, it's not being well distributed, and new rules are needed to avoid fraud. Perhaps it will be more interesting, although involves much more work, to know in depth the circumstances of each person, why he or she is in that situation, and see what can be done to eradicate the situation. For me, the universal basic income doesn't solve the underlying problem, but is in advance to reduce a situation that shouldn't be allowed. So that's all. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, thank you. I know we have questions and comments in the chat section. Unfortunately, I'm not able to read them. Okay, there you go. Grace Washori, Community Engagement Lead. Good. Thank you, Grace, for joining us. There's Timothy Davis. Okay. Kathleen Lihanda, representing IFC Professional Coaches based in Nairobi. Thank you, Kathleen. Anyone else? Okay. All right, those are the ones who are able to, but also we'll go to, oh, you are selecting some more, yeah? Okay. Sorry, the technology, so we have to project it. We have Timothy Davis. Okay, this is just okay. So who made the comment? Anonymous. So Anonymous has said, addressing poverty and financial inclusion, sometimes ethically questionable requests can come to harm. Okay, I agree with you. Anything else? All right. So please feel free to, we don't want it to be a one-way traffic. So feel free to ask any of the panelists the questions. We can have a final round of questions at the end of it or during the session. So and in case maybe what I also will wish is, let's say you had some of these experiences before, maybe approaching a microfinance or an investor, and your experience. We want to be able to learn from some of those experiences. So feel free really to share with us. So the next question is Mr. Innocent joining us from Zambia. I'm happy, Mr. Innocent. When we talked at first, you were worried about the storm. So I'm glad you are still surviving.
It appears it has cleared now. The sun is out now. It has cleared.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think you had rainmakers. Okay, fantastic.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. So Mr. Innocent will be giving us the perspective of COMESA, which is a very instrumental trade body in Africa. And so the question, I think, will be like, if you look at African continent, 90% of businesses are in the SME sector and employing nearly 60% of the workforce. So the question is, how is COMESA supporting youth and women-led SMEs, especially to connect to regional and international markets? And also tied to that question is, what opportunities can they look out for in this year and the years to come? Mr. Innocent.
Thank you, David. As I said earlier on, COMESA, that's standing for Common Market for East and Southern Africa, is there to promote or facilitate trade within the 20 member states. But for trade to take place, there must be investment to be done in industry so that we are able to produce local goods and services which we are then able to trade within the region. So in this respect, COMESA has come up with a harmonized industrial strategy and action plan for the 21 member states. And one of the key intervention areas is related to the industrialization agenda, is to support small, medium enterprises to become, so that they become globally competitive in the goods and services they produce. So the policy direction is enhancing small, medium enterprises' industrial competitiveness. Going back a bit, you know, the small, medium enterprises sector at both national and regional level is affected by many challenges, including lack of access to affordable finance, inadequate process and production methods, limited access to technology, markets, and lack of infrastructure, and then the hostile business environment and weak management structures, and also lack of skilled labor, among others. So local businesses, and in particular small medium enterprises, are used to have a short-term focus in their business horizon. So there is lack of support, which affects their ability to perform. So really the strategic objective in the industrial strategy is to create an enabling environment that improves the competitiveness of small medium enterprises. So what are the deriving from that, what are the strategic activities that we are currently implementing in as far as developing the market for the small medium enterprises? One is develop or review regional and national strategies to promote small medium enterprises competitiveness. Create small medium enterprises business management information systems where they can access a variety of market information. Promote cluster development and cluster linkages with identified global clusters to enhance information and market access. Develop a regional program for the upgrading of small medium enterprises technology and quality management system that relates to the issue of standards. And then promote subcontracting and partnership exchange to encourage linkages between buyers and suppliers, in particular to support and facilitate small medium enterprises involvement in value chains. So these are the strategies which we are currently undertaking. One policy or framework which we have developed relates to the COMESA local content policy framework, whereby we encourage big firms, big companies to subcontract some of the activities to small medium enterprises so that they're able to participate in the global or regional or national value chains through local content, through promoting local content activities. So now these are some of the activities that we are currently employing as which are currently in place as COMESA in an attempt to promote small medium enterprises so that they are able to join the regional or global value chains. However, now with the COVID-19 pandemic, you know, there has been some disruption, or there is disruption in the regional global value chains, and this has affected the performance of most small, if not all, small medium enterprises. You know, with the closures of borders, you know, movement of restricted movement, etc. This has affected the business activities of most small medium enterprises. But what we've done at COMESA is that we've developed guidelines which are there to promote increased local production during this pandemic and also after pandemic COVID-19. So this really relates to the facilitation and encouraging local production of essential goods and services, including COVID-19 PPE by private and public sectors within the region by reshaping manufacturing and strengthening sector competitiveness through consolidation and innovation and tapping from the potential of women and youth, among others. So you can see how we are trying to assist the youth, the women during this pandemic, COVID-19 pandemic. And also identify regional value chains, formalize small medium enterprises, women and youth-owned business that promote an integrated regional manufacturing and joint industrial projects based on comparative advantage. The idea here is that because the global value chains have been disturbed, now we are trying our best to promote regional value chains, an integrated approach to manufacturing, where both the women and the youth are involved, so that we are able to produce what we have been importing from outside, but we are producing it locally. So these are, and also to enhance digital transformation, that's the e-commerce, the e-trade, to reduce and avoid physical contacts during transaction within and across member states, while at the same time cutting down on transaction costs. So these are some of the activities which we are actually promoting during this COVID-19 pandemic period, and we hope that they will be upscaled after the pandemic is stabilized. With those few words, David, I submit. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And just a follow-up, just maybe you'll just comment on it briefly. During COVID, there was little movement of goods into our countries. And I remember, for example, in Kenyan context, we did realize that the Kenyan entrepreneur or SMEs can actually manufacture some of these products, whether it's PPEs, whether it's medical supplies, ventilators. We were importing, we import even cutlery, textiles, which are really materials that we can be able to produce in the country. So I just wanted to find out, and for example, if you walk into the supermarkets into our countries, I find sugar from outside Africa. I find a lot of goods that our farmers can be able to produce and we can be able to manufacture locally. So the question, I think, at your level at COMESA is whether manufacturing is dying in Africa. Kenya, I think the contribution of manufacturing to GDP now is 10%. I think over 3-4 years ago, it was 17%. So you can almost see that it's contracting. I don't know what's the experience of other countries. Is this something that can also be addressed under COMESA or under AU?
Thank you, David, for that's a good question, which you have question. There has been some deindustrialization which has taken place, or which is taking place in the African region, whether it's COMESA, whether it's SADC, whether it's the East African community, where we are experiencing a large influx of cheap goods from the advanced countries, likes of China, the USA, Europe itself. But that doesn't necessarily mean that industrialization has died. What it means is that now, as regional economic communities, we've got to put our act together to promote import substitution within our economies. Just like what you mentioned earlier on, when the whole COVID pandemic started, We are importing all of the PPEs from outside, from China, from Europe, whatever. But we came to realize later on that but we can produce those things locally. And right now, as we speak, most of the PPEs throughout the COMESA region are being produced locally. So what it means is that it's an issue of taking challenges and turning them into opportunities. That's what we have to do. The challenge of the COVID pandemic is now being turned into an opportunity. We are now being able to produce most of our PPEs locally. That's what the industrialists must have in mind, taking challenges and turning them into opportunities. That's it. Once we do that, we are done. And then we are supporting the small medium enterprise. And you find that most of these PPEs are being produced by all of them by the small medium enterprises, universities, centers of whatever, of higher learning. So really, we have got to turn that mindset of turning challenges into. Once we do that, then we are done, and we will now overcome this challenge of where we are getting cheap goods, imported goods, and causing a lot of deindustrialization. I don't know whether I've answered your question.
Yes, you've done. You elaborately answered it. And so I think the key point is there must be goodwill and there must be deliberate effort by the governments to promote local manufacturing. I think that's the key message. Mm-hmm. I'm told from the audience we have Faith Mulumba who wants to say something. So she has to unmute, yeah? So Faith, if you are listening, you can go ahead, please.
She's on mute.
Yeah, she's on
mute. Okay. There you go. Yeah. Oh, okay. So if you can't unmute yourself, Faith, maybe just type the question and direct it to any of the panelists, and then we'll have it read out and it will be answered. You can be sure it will be answered. Yeah. Okay. Right. So, and please keep on the questions coming. Like I mentioned, we want to get your views on these interesting different topics. And so keep the questions coming to any of the panelists or general comments. We'll appreciate. So we go to Mr. Chukuma from Race Capital. I think one of the things that you mentioned that, yes. One of from your opening remarks and comments, you mentioned that you invest in seed, pre-seed, and a few early stage companies. I think that's where there's a huge gap, absolutely huge gap in many of our countries, that most of the funds will focus on the once there's post-revenue or when the companies have a bit of traction. And over 90% of these noble ideas actually die at that very early stage. So we will wish that you share with us your experience investing in this stage. In terms of ticket size, maybe you already mentioned that. How do you be able, because I think most funders say that's a very risky stage. You don't know whether this will succeed or not. So how do you cushion yourself as an investor, and also generally on how many African markets you're active in or planning to expand to?
Okay, thank you very much for that, David. So the way first of all, our principal investment business is actually new. We started last year. So before that, we're mainly advisory driven and more for infrastructure type deals deals, when people are in the development stage, instead of taking all our fees as cash and upfront and things like that, or just capital raising fees, we will switch some of that into equity stakes in the deals. But what we realized more recently, especially given all the activity and fascination with the likes of fintech, which is quite pronounced, but there's obviously tons of other startup activity. We decided to also begin to look at the early stage deals. The early stage deals for us, I think that entrepreneurs really need a lot of help and hand-holding, especially, and we can only do it for the spaces that we understand very, very well. So, at AACOSE, we shy away from industries that we don't have any knowledge in. So we're focused on things like technology, fintech, financial services, media, telecom. I think I mentioned healthcare before. The real challenge, as you can imagine, is understanding and working with through ideation to really figure out the value proposition, the unique selling point, and where the problem really is, and making sure that the team actually has the capabilities to deliver what they say they're going to deliver. So, for instance, you're looking at a fintech play. We just had one that we declined in our investment committee. Where they were lacking was in the experience of the team within the context of working in Africa, especially a lot of our markets. They're not normal places to work. Somewhere like Nigeria, for instance, there's high volatility, highly uncertain, very complex, very ambiguous, right? And this was before COVID. So now that COVID is here, it's even more. Even the regulatory environment, the FX, FX is always a big issue in emerging markets, but in particular in Africa. And Nigeria has, a very, very tricky regime. But these are the markets that we've survived in, so much so that one has even written a book about it called In Pursuit, Journeys in African Entrepreneurship, where myself and my co-author essentially document our journey from Nigeria, living in America, working on Wall Street, and then coming back to ultimately set up businesses of our own. He in technology, I in investment banking, and then other businesses that we're doing. Even now, when I think of opportunities, sometimes the opportunity comes as a result of personal pain. So, one of the things that I used to when I was in banking, I was just listening when Alejandro was talking about health and education. Alejandro, when I was in banking, you would not believe in the mid 2000s, I was sitting at a strategy session about 2008. And, after we had discussed, this strategy session for the following year, we started to close, and I asked a question. I said, listen, how can we be closing a meeting like this? We haven't discussed agriculture. We haven't discussed, given all the food security and challenges that we know exist. This is 2008. We haven't discussed healthcare, right? Given that with sick, if you have a nation that isn't healthy, health is wealth, right? If you have a nation that is healthy, you got a problem there. So we certainly need more beds and more hospitals and things like that. And then lastly, education, because if we don't fund the education sector, it's going to be a problem. And, the guy in the room who's a credit, risk kind of guy, I used to sit on credit committee and exco for the bank I worked for. The guy says to me, he says, but Chukwuka, you realize that the cash flows of a school are children and the cash flows of a hospital are sick people. How do you take security if there's a problem? And he sort of giggled. And I was so sad and disgusted at the same time. So though I sit on the, though AACOSE is set up as a, we're more on the traditional spectrum, we actually decided that we must have at least 10% of the things that we do on this other side, on the impact investing side. So whether it's, with the diagnostic center, but with a quite a focus on these COVID machines, because again, places like Lagos, 21 million people live in Lagos. They're touching each other and pushing and everything. So the ability to test the population much quicker is going to be hospitals. We don't have a lot, even though there's a lot of Nigerian doctors and nurses abroad, we've helped to set in Nigeria. For me personally, and I talk about that in the book, is human capital, right? The key difference between developed and developing countries, quality of human capital that is deployed. So for me personally, I took that to say, look, in Africa, what are we going to do? Forget about gold and oil and all these things. Our population is young, they are trainable, they are smart. How do we spend time there? So in my own little way, we set up something called SEO Africa. It's actually a US organization that's been around for over 50 something years. If you know the private equity firm KKR, there's a gentleman there who used to, Henry Kravitz, who used to run KKR. He's actually our overall chairman. So I sit as the chairman for Nigeria, and I'm on the board for Africa. And what we do at SEO is we take these kids from Nigerian and Ghanaian universities, but we've actually started taking kids from Kenya and SA as well as Cote d'Ivoire. And we bring them to Ghana. We do training for them. We mentor them. We sometimes have to, clothe and help them with their dressing and things like that. We do everything. We take them to a hotel to learn about soft skills like, dining etiquette and things like that. But we also do hard skills, whether it's financial modeling and different things. And then we deploy these kids to a number of firms. We have an engineering program where they go to like a STEM track where they go into Tullow Oil, the guys who found oil in Ghana. So they go to firms like Tullow Oil and Gensa, and GE has a power business. We send them there. We also send them abroad. So kids who've never left the continent before but have been trained by us. We have clients like Goldman Sachs, Bank of America, Merrill Lynch, and Facebook. So we helped last year to run a hackathon for the weekend to help the kids, better understand how Facebook would challenge them in terms of an internship. And, some of these kids never traveled before. Because we've been doing this now for 8 years, we have over almost 500 kids that have gone through the program. And would you believe that we actually have some that have reached the vice president level at Bank of America Merrill Lynch, even though they had never traveled, 8 years ago when we started. So we've shipped them to the offices in Hong Kong, in New York, London, and Paris. And they in turn now contribute money to SEO to help the next generation, because we explain to them that it's not about you, it's about those that are coming after you. So those are some examples in a way where even though we still do power and infrastructure and sort of those type of things, we also dabble in your world, even if it's only 10% of the time. The last thing that I'll mention before I stop is, since I was in the US for the last year, I found myself feeling very, very sad for small businesses in North America here, in Canada, and specifically Canada and America. And so I decided to lend some of my time for free. I joined a group of advisors. The US has gone through a lot of Black Lives Matter issues. There's now serious, I would say it's more like South Africa, my brother Evans. It's more like what you find with the Black empowerment that's coming now to the US, as opposed to just affirmative action, right? So with the Black empowerment, what that means is that the people that control the country, really control the economic base, are now willing to shed some of the power to allow Black people to be on, not just employees, but actually C-level jobs, and also equity, just like you have in SA, get equity in the businesses and things like that. So what we've done is I joined a Black network. So myself, a couple of other people who are either ex-Wall Street or consulting or whatever. We came together and we're helping very small businesses that would never be able to afford our services, helping them with their business plan. You know, the PPA, you know, they have these loans that they had to get because of COVID. You know, for the ones that are pre-seed, it could be a woman who, you know, has left her husband, has 3 kids, but you know, wants to start her own business. It could be, you know, a bakery or whatever it is, and would literally get on a phone. 2 weekends ago, I must have spent something like 6 hours with about 12 businesses where we just, you know, listened to their pitches and gave them feedback on their business plans and stuff. Because again, now you've got Zoom, right? So you can be in multiple locations at the same time. So those are the sorts of things that, you know, I've thought of doing. The other thing is on the student side as well. This last week, I taught a strategy class at the University of Waterloo in Ontario, Canada, based on my book, again, as a way to give back. So while we are on the sharkish side, we still find ways of, you know, helping.
Yes, so I think the examples you give and the personal initiatives, the personal stories, I think this is what we want to hear. I mean, because it inspires more people to take action. There are a couple of follow-up questions on your presentation, and also a couple of others for COMESA. But maybe before we go to the questions from the audience, maybe you'll comment briefly on this. Is that I think previously we say there's lack of funding coming into for early stage, and especially for the early stage entrepreneurs or startups. And I think Elena said that this is a challenge globally. It's not just limited to African context, but we see something different in Nigeria. For example, early this year, or maybe it was mid this year, you had one of the largest buyouts. Paystack, was acquired by Stripe for $200 million US. And that's nearly half of what Kenyan startups raised for 2019. And then that's one. But two is that we see a lot of vibrancy in Nigeria. For example, over 55% of the funding raised is going to local founders. And this is something that we, as a country, for example, in Kenya, we don't have very strong angel networks that can be able to support and invest into SMEs. So is there a secret to what Nigeria is doing that other countries can copy, especially in Africa?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, and thank you for mentioning the Paystack example. I think it's about time that some good news came out of Nigeria, given all the trouble that we're usually in. So we're all very happy, and you know, the fact that the guys were young and the business was only a 5-year-old business selling for $200 million. That's great. Again, I think that I don't know whether there's anything called an entrepreneurial gene, but we explore it in the book and we ask the question, you know, why do we see quite a lot of aggressive entrepreneurs coming from Africa? You look at the, you know, richest Black person on the face of the earth that's, you know, Black, it's a Nigerian. If you look at the woman, it's a Nigerian as well. So there's something in the water there. Maybe it's all the military rule and all the suffering we've gone through. People are just desperate to get out of poverty. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's that we're just too many. And so the opportunities are very few for the few that can get in. And so the battle is a lot. But suffice to say, I can tell you that transaction will likely be dwarfed in the next 5 years. There's, you know, right now, for instance, you know, there's all these incubators. Y Combinator has a submission on this Monday, and I'll be spending my weekend with two of the two people who've been invited to Y Combinator to consider their businesses. I can tell you right now that one of them, the guy's like 23 years old. He's already been knighted he's already met the Queen when he was 19 for all the stuff he did from 16 to 19. They're very aggressive kids. They're very, very smart, and they have some wicked solutions coming to the market. So I think, again, because Nigeria has so many problems, it now forces you to have to find solutions to those problems. Me, myself, as an example, while we were writing the book, we went through so much to try and get the book into markets like Kenya. We had to fly it on KQ, from Lagos during the strike, during the pandemic, finding a flight that's going into Kenya so we could launch the book in Kenya. It was actually available in APSA Towers. And even to do that, it must have cost something like $4 per book. It was expensive. But that pain that we went through in trying to figure out how to get a book into Kenya, we're going to be live in Ghana next week. Before year end, we want to do Kigali and Accra and Abidjan. In doing those things, we decided to start a new business on the publishing side to help other self-publishing authors come through us and see, get their books distributed and stuff. Brand new business, not something we thought about before, but it's something that we think will solve a problem. So I think that the only thing I would say we have in Nigeria is hunger, really, right? And we're constantly trying to find, because things are so difficult in Nigeria in particular, we're constantly trying to find solutions to those problems. And so therefore people are, always way out, in terms of the funding. I mean, I love what Elena is doing with the fund of funds approach, where you're looking to put money in other funds. I think that's a great, that's some of where it's needed. And you're right, David, there's so much money available for private equity investments, growth capital, all that stuff, billions of dollars. In fact, these days, a lot of the investors don't want to sign checks of less than $50 million, right? But Africa doesn't need $50 million per investment. Very few, how many companies can take that amount of money? I remember when KKR came to Africa a couple of years ago, they were looking for deals for like 2 years. They could only do one transaction because they insisted they wanted to do a 200 million minimum investment. So they found a deal, I think, in Ethiopia. Nobody else would take that money, even a company like Dangote wouldn't want to get diluted that much. So where we really need money is where some of you guys are playing, in this sort of $5,000 all the way to about $500,000. That's really where Africa is, right? It's micro. But from there, even if you do 10 deals, one of them, if it hits, it'll be over the moon. So I think we have to have more. That's why we are like, okay, how do we retrofit our typically big infrastructure mindset and deal structuring to smaller deals so that we can help these, these individuals that have great ideas and then attract capital. So ultimately we plan on raising a fund that will, I don't think we need more than $25 to $50 million, but I want to be able to write very small checks for even pre-seed investments.
Thank you. I think what we're learning is problems are opportunities, and thank you very much, Chikuma. I think we are now, time runs very quickly. We are nearly towards the last phase of the discussion. But before we go to the closing remarks and other comments, I think there were some questions from the audience. Okay. So this is from Kathleen Lehandra to everyone. Mr. Chuka, thank you so much for sharing your personal story, why you started the AACOSE Capital. Is it possible that you share where we can access your book? I think you mentioned APSA Towers, but maybe you can give more directions to Catherine.
Yeah, what I'll do is I'll put it in the notes here very quickly.
Okay, that's
but
great.
It's available globally on Amazon, so that's always easy. But I'll put it in the notes immediately. And then somebody asked the question, I think, about SEO, the SEO program. I've just put the website as well, so I'm responding in.
Okay, fantastic. Next one is to Innocent. Are there specific trainings offered by COMESA to support SMEs to deal with COVID challenge? So if Mr. Innocent, you can briefly respond to that.
Thank you, David. Right now, the training modules, especially as it relates to the small medium enterprises, on how best they can be able to navigate their production processes, their business activities during this COVID-19 period. Yes, it's something in the pipeline right now, but it's not yet operational. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Maurice Omondi, that's the last one from Tangaza, is thanking you for the presentations. He's saying he's interested in knowing how to mobile local philanthropists. Oh, mobilize. Okay, it's in a short. Okay, to support social entrepreneurship. Many people give to charity. How can we convince them to support? So maybe Alejandro or Elena, maybe one of you can respond to this.
Sorry, what was the question, David?
Yeah, so the question is how to mobilize local philanthropists to support social entrepreneurship. And I think this is very profound because it also relates to, there's little also funding for, like there's little local funding for startups or SMEs, for example, in Kenya. A lot of money we get is foreign. So the question is, how can we mobilize local support for SMEs?
It's a difficult answer to the question to answer, but what I've seen that has been happening in other places in the world is that it's a slow movement, right? So slowly philanthropists and foundations get on board and start supporting social enterprises and impact investments, especially in their own region, but it starts very slowly. I think that there is definitely now in Africa, for example, there is now access to more data of how social entrepreneurship works and how investors are actually responding and investing in this type of enterprises. There is an association called the African Venture Philanthropy Association, and they have recently just published some very meaningful reports about the funding deployed into Africa. They divided by region, so East, West, and Southern Africa, and it's really good. I would encourage any philanthropist that in the African region that is interested in looking into maybe going beyond just giving grants and making investments in enterprises, to look into these reports and to get connected with the African Venture Philanthropy Association, because that's the reason why it's a think tank organization for social entrepreneurship investing. So I think because of when we see that they're building this type of resources, that an area starts getting this type of associations, etc., that is a sign that this type of activity is becoming more, I wouldn't say mainstream, but it's becoming more normal.
Okay, thank you very much.
Just to add on what my sister Elena said, one thing which I've noticed in my dealings with the small medium enterprises within the COMESA region is the shortage of funding for productive purposes. We are getting a lot of funding from donors, the likes of the European Union, USAID, but most of it is just for capacity building. What we really want, what the small medium enterprise factor or whatever company wants, is the meat itself, money for productive purposes. That is what is in short supply. A lot of them have been capacitated in terms of increasing production, but there is a acute shortage of funding for increased production and productivity. There are many areas that can be we can rely on. the diaspora funding, just like what is happening in Ethiopia, how Ethiopia has managed to raise funds from the diaspora to promote domestic production. That's another source of funding which must be tapped. The private-public partnerships in as far as raising capital is concerned is also another source. We've got the financial sector, we've got the non-financial sector. Those can be other sources of funding if really there is really joint public and private partnerships in as far as financial mobilization is concerned. So really what it means is the resources are there, but it's us who are lacking the innovative ideas of raising those resources within the African continent. That's what we are. That's why we are stuck. That's why we are unable to implement most of the strategies, industrial strategies. It's because we are failing to raise the capital to implement those activities. We are only relying on the European Union, relying on these, but those are not adequate. Those are grants. They don't take us anywhere. What we want is the meat itself. The meat is there here in Africa. It's us being innovative in as far as my colleague in Nigeria, Chukuka. You see, the idea is being innovative. That's what we all want. The funding is there, the resources are there, but it's a question of being innovative. How best can we tie everything and then come with a good package that we can say, oh, okay, we can fund our SMEs. With that, I just thought I'd just add what my sister didn't say. Thank you.
Sorry, could I say something?
Yes, Evans, yes.
You know, I think we are our own enemies. We, you know, as Africans particularly, we are consumption minded, and we are always looking for a better deal somewhere. I mean, I think my brother Chukuma talked about, you know, I'm not quite sure if it was you, my brother, or it was Innocent, who talked about, you know, us importing cheap PPE from China, when we could actually have manufactured that here. And because we have such a mentality, we do not produce something that is attractive enough, you know, to actually get our own people to invest, you know, into what we do. And I think that's the first point. The second point is, I think we have regarded ourselves as poor for too long. And because of the mentality of us always wanting to be supported through donations, donors, you know, from overseas and stuff like that, we have actually, you know, made ourselves more recipients than, you know, suppliers of capital that can actually help us do what we need to do. You know, so I think first of all, what we need to do is to shift, you know, to have a mental shift, or a paradigm shift, and see ourselves as investors and see ourselves as, you know, manufacturers rather than as consumers. But I think also a third point is maybe my brother Innocent from COMESA can spearhead this through policy, because I mean, I think our governments, you know, do not, you know, come up with policies that are enabling for social, you know, investment by locals. Like for instance, I mean, if you are trying to find some tax incentives to invest, there are a lot fewer in Africa than you would find, you know, in the developed countries. And so, you know, because of the poverty mentality and because of lack of incentives for us to use the little savings that we have to invest, we end up not, you know, investing anything and consuming. So, you know, the governments also have to come up with enabling legislation that allows locals to invest, and COMESA can, you know, spearhead that, you know, there are a lot of other things I can talk about. I just wanted to share these three.
Wow. Yeah, I think the cat is coming out of the bag. We're starting to address the elephant in the room, and really, I think this has always been the discussion across the continent, also in Kenya, is that how can we mobilize local resources to support our own enterprises? So, Mr. Innocent, I think Evans has given you a very good challenge.
we will be sure to invite you in next year's conference so that we can see if there's improvement. Because yes, because I think at COMESA level and also at African Union level, I think that if this becomes like a strong agenda and that governments commit as a given percentage to support local manufacturing, local enterprises, and I think that perhaps will go a long way. So Innocent, we give you a challenge.
well taken, David. When we meet next, I know we would have made progress towards this. I'll need to rope in my team here, including Chukuka.
All right.
Chukuka, yeah. He has got a lot of ideas.
I'm ready for you, sir. I'm ready for you. I'm ready for you.
Thank you.
What do you want? Financial innovative ideas. How best can we?
Everything.
Yeah, that's all. What is it? Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, and I'll also ask Elena if you could be able to write the name of it was African Venture Association, maybe in the comment section, so that some people can link directly to it. Okay. So we are now on to. Thank you. We are now on to the closing remarks. I think you wanted to run a certain poll. You're running a poll, yeah? Okay, so the poll there will be a poll for the audience. Tell us what you think about the discussion today. You can also suggest on what topics we need to focus on next time. So the question is, what are your key takeaways from the session? And then, do you see any opportunities to build on better? I think those are the two questions. What are your key takeaways from this session? And do you see any opportunity to build better? So tell us what you feel on the comment section. So as we wrap up, I will ask maybe the panelists, so you will take maybe 2 minutes each. So we'll start with Evans. And the question is opportunities. What are the opportunities to realize the new economic paradigm beyond the pandemic? And so if you can talk about the opportunities in new economic paradigm beyond the pandemic, of course, and of course also give this, also include your closing remarks.
Well, thank you. Very, very quickly, I think the opportunities are plenty. And COVID-19 actually has caused us to see those opportunities which we did not see. I think even before COVID, we talked about, the poverty that Africa is facing from an end poverty point of view. We saw that by 2030, 9 in every 10 people will be living in poverty, in Africa. And that, there's not much investment coming through to Africa by Africans. And I think we've already talked about that. So we decided that we would actually support, if you like, businesses in Kenya through our new partnership with a new organization called KUA Ventures. And that organization is actually meant to be working with the Kenyans and making sure that we are supporting small and growing businesses that are founded and owned by Kenyan nationals. Of course, we want to help those entrepreneurs who really want to be Christ-like in terms of the way they run their businesses, so that they can combat, the corruption that we see prevalent in Africa. We are actually looking for SGPs that are looking for, investment of between $10,000 and $100,000. And, we also want to make sure that these businesses actually are taking advantage of, if you like, the opportunities produced by COVID-19 crisis. I think I will stop there, and I will just, if you like, type in the contact details of KUA Ventures that would promote what I've been talking about here. Thank you.
Fantastic, fantastic. I think your colleague Madalena mentioned it also to us. So if you could type it, I think that will be good for our audience to be aware of. Thank you very much, Evans. Next, we can have Elena. So I think it's the same question. What opportunities you see for us to realize a new economic paradigm?
Thanks, David. Well, I think that what we've seen so far through this pandemic is that there is an opportunity to strengthen the sector in general by helping by helping create stronger and more resilient enterprises. And the reason why I say that from the investor perspective, right? Because that's where in the realm where I work, I've seen investors staying and supporting businesses, exercising their patient capital. That's what impact investing is known for. So basically, existing funds, existing investments that are already in place, outstanding, have been either the clients have been given forbearance or relief to be able to make their payments in a later date when they have better cash flows. So I have seen also investors continue deploying funds in Africa and the rest of the world, continue making investments throughout the pandemic, of course, with a very restricted investment policy, if you want to say. They're not taking that much risk, but it's still, they believe, and that is very good. That's why we see, things are still moving. They believe that there are good companies, that there are good opportunities through the pandemic, and that this shall pass, and that we will restart our economies in due time. So I think that's very important. And then lastly, we've seen also some investors, with the help of some DFIs, create COVID relief funds for companies, for investments that if the existing investments that need that have tight cash flows and they need extra help with the liquidity. So I don't see investors going anywhere, and I see companies becoming stronger and more resilient, as I mentioned. And with that, I mean, what I was mentioning, the work we do at Oryx Impact of identifying exactly this type of fund managers as well. We see that the people on the ground are continue working, are continue launching funds, are continue finding good opportunities. So it's just a matter of not scaring away the investors, and they're not going anywhere. I don't see that.
Thanks, Lena. I think that's very positive. And just on a personal note, Oryx, the choice of the name Oryx is a beautiful antelope in one of our national parks. Were you motivated by this?
Yes, by the resilience of the yes, it's by the resilience of this animal, of the oryx, with then you're able to survive. So yeah, thank you.
Good. All right, thank you, Elena. So Leandro, I think the same question, opportunities in the new economy and what you see beyond the pandemic for your company as Africa.
Yes, the corona crisis opens the doors to raise the possibility of a new paradigm. A sustainable care system must be one of the fundamental pillars of this model to be created. As we saw in the last financial and economic crisis, austerity policies have created more inequalities. So new epidemics and crises cannot be avoided. So now it's time to act, understanding that our economic model must change to a new model, including ethics and social well-being. At the local level, the institutional capacities must be strong, building alliances with the public and private actors, so generating social impact. improving the economy through local trade incentive. After all, promoting the circular economy. So these, I think, the opportunities that we have to take.
Mm.
Thank you very much, Leandro, and yeah, and of all your work in, you said you are in Nairobi, yeah?
Yeah, now I'm in Nairobi. I just arrived 2 days ago. Because of this pandemic, I didn't have the opportunity to travel before, but now I'm here in Nairobi. That is very good.
Okay, then we go to Mr. Innocent, who we gave some assignment for next conference. So Innocent, you can also wrap it up for us.
Yeah, I mean, I think most of the things have been mentioned. Now, I'm just now dwelling on the assignment itself. What it needs is that whatever we come with as regional economic communities, is to have our member states be involved in. I mean, have political will and commitment when implementing some of the activities or some of the policy changes, some of the strategies that would have been given. So there's that element of political will and commitment, policy consistency itself. Once we do that, then the opportunities themselves will also increase. Correct institutions themselves, which are going to run these the new paradigms, the new paradigm shift. We need solid and efficient institutions. Once we do that, then that the whole process will sail through. So really, in conclusion, I would say that the opportunities are there. The COVID-19 pandemic has taught us that no, we must take challenges and turn them into opportunities. We are able now to manufacture some of our PPEs, which we are previously importing when the pandemic started. So that's turning challenges into opportunities. So really, what I'm saying is beyond COVID-19, the opportunities are there, they are plentiful. And as long as we promote integrated regional manufacturing, integrated joint industrial strategies, which are aimed at deepening regional integration, then that will lead to increased opportunities within our regional economic communities. Those are my last comments.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Innocent. I think that's profound. Again, talking about ease of doing business, I think that could be a good starting point for each country. Kenya used to be number 170 in terms of global ranking for ease of doing business. I think now we have moved to nearly 50 something. So I think if each country can take deliberate measures to enhance this, fantastic. Yeah. Mr. Chukuma?
Yes, David, thank you very much. So there's actually a couple of things. Africa, we function in VUCA+++. So VUCA stands for those that don't know, volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity of a market, right? Africa, in particular Nigeria, but certainly Africa, has always functioned in VUCA+++, which means that it was very volatile, very uncertain, very ambiguous, and very complex. The world joined us with COVID. So all of them in the US, in Europe, Italy, everybody was running around. COVID had scattered things. Africa didn't even shake because we already had Ebola, Lassa fever, malaria, everything, all at the same time, plus bad government, plus everything. And you're still, pushing out GDP numbers that are better than the world, right? So we are poised for doing very, very well in this current environment. You see that there's only 40, no offense, one death is too much, but 41,000 deaths in a continent of 1.2 billion people versus the great America that has lost 200 and something thousand and counting, right? It's still a lot of days before Trump goes. Even that alone shows you that we are in a very good place. The other thing that you should be aware of is that I made the point earlier about no one wanting to finance hospitals back in the day. Remember the point I made? This year, because of COVID, one Nigerian bank funded, nobody could fly in from Europe or come and help it. We did it ourselves. A bank set up a hospital in a week, beginning to end. So it is possible to do stuff. The other thing that was a big blessing is this oil curse. Oil fell so much that we had to start diversifying away from the typical commodity play where you sit down, do nothing, and just wait for oil revenues to come. Is in this year that the real asset, people, started making sense. What is a bunch of kids come together, young guys, 5 years later, they built a business that they sold during COVID for $200 million. And I was telling you before that there's going to be many exits. And then, of course, we had the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement that was signed 2 years ago. Nigeria joined it this year. And I believe for the first time, because of this crisis, Africa will begin to, ease up its borders. It's crazy that Alejandro can probably go into more countries in Africa with ease than I can. I mean, that's just ridiculous, right? Because of the passport. So I think now with the free trade agreement, ease of moving of goods, South African Airways having problems. We hear that the Ethiopians might be the ones buying them. That's better than it being sold to the Dutch, KPM. I mean, whoever it is that's in the Netherlands. Positions are going to be within Africa, and I think that is beautiful. So those would be some of the things that I think I wanted to mention. And then lastly, for the first time, Africans were always looking for visa to go abroad. America, do not come to Africa because you have bigger COVID problems than we do here. It's usually the other way around. Remember when Ebola was happening? All the land from Africa and BA ran away. They left Liberia and all this kind of stuff. So we were, able to walk almost like a peacock. We're like, yeah, we're Africans. It's a great time to be from here, and we're happy to have, Elena. I'm sure she was to Kenya, and I'm sure Alejandro is happy to be back in a good place where things are nice, right? So yeah, that's it.
Yeah. That's good.
I think
that's the deeper meaning of original.
Yeah, sorry. I just wanted to say Mr. Chukuma can also try something on comic.
I will try.
Yeah, but we wanted, unfortunately, we were not able to be joined by Charles Tiza from AU because there are also fundamental issues we want to touch on, especially on after you mentioned it, but there are issues to do with African passport. I think that was one of the key issues that was meant to happen. So, but we hope that we pray for his health and hopefully he can be able to join us in the next. So I don't know whether there were any comments, but I think there were a number of comments. Okay, all right. Okay, so despite the negative stories we hear, I think there's still also positives. For example, 4 countries in Africa have poverty rates below 3%. So that's Equatorial Guinea, Gabon, Mauritius, and Seychelles. Of course, we really talk about this because we like to focus on the bad ones. But it will take a lot of team effort. And just like Michael Jordan says, teamwork wins you championship. Talent wins you games. And I think if all African countries come together, we can win the championship. It will take government's initiative, it will take citizens, it will take efforts of our organizations in this panel. And so it will be a collective citizens of Africa. And in the words of our icon, Nelson Mandela, the greatest glory in living lies not in never falling, but in rising every time we fall. It always seems impossible until it's done. It has been an honor of my life to host you for this event. So I want to sincerely thank the panelists, wherever you are, our friends from the US, So just wishing you a good day ahead. Our friends from Africa. Today is, of course, Friday, and Friday evenings and afternoons we are now almost going to weekend. So again, to thank our audience for sticking with us for the last 2 hours. I want to thank Tangaza University, Ashoka, and all the partners who made this possible. Thank you very much. Enjoy your weekend. So I want to hand over to Benedetta.
Thank you very much, all our panelists and David for moderating the session. I would like to thank in a very special way Innocent from Lusaka, Elena Pons, Spain, and she's in the US, Chikuka from USA, Alejandro, who is now in Nairobi, Evans from Pretoria, and also David, I mentioned again, from Kenya. It has been an honor for you to grace this last session of the conference. And the things that are coming out is that we really need to have collaborative efforts to ensure that we build back better. And it's for us to look forward to more partnerships that have been developed from these sessions and to look forward to creating more value for what we are doing in our continent. In the last 2 days, we've had a series of sessions. We've had in total, for each day, we have had 7 sessions. And out of these sessions, the main theme that is coming out is that we have to collaborate for development. We have to collaborate for economic growth. We have to collaborate to work and to grow Africa beyond the pandemic. We thank all the participants, all the delegates, all the teams that have put this together. And in a very special way, we thank Tangaza University College. We thank Ashoka. We thank the Newmark team and all our partners who have put this together, worked hand in hand to ensure that this goes well. And in a very special way, we would like to recognize Brother Dr. Jonas, who is the DVC designate in Tangaza University College, and also Mr. Vincent Othiambo of Ashoka Africa for the work that you've done in putting this conference together. And thank all the panelists in all the day's sessions and in yesterday's sessions. It has been a great honor to have all of you, the participants, the delegates, the speakers, the crew, and everyone else who has participated in this. Thank you very much. And we look forward to more engagements in the future. And in the coming week, we're going to be sending out communication and also a newsletter for the results and the outcomes of this conference. And we look forward to start planning the next session or the next conference, which will happen the same time next year. And from these conversations, we also look forward to building more collaborations, building platforms for research, so that we can see how each of us can play a role in ensuring that we grow big, we have a good economic recovery beyond the pandemic. From Tangaza University College, we say thank you very much. From the AACOSE team, we say thank you very much. And from the Ashoka team, we say thank you very much. God bless you. See you next year, AACOSE 5. Thank you.